Hi, I'm Rasheed Ogunlaru, coach, speaker and author, and I'm delighted to be here with the founders of Reach Society. And I wonder if you'll first of all just quickly tell us your names and introduce yourselves.
Sure. Hi Rasheed. My name's Rob Neal, and I work as a civil servant with the Ministry of Justice.
Okay, I'm Dwayne Neal. I'm the chairman of Reach Society, but I'm also a father of 4 children and been married for 40 years. That'll do.
Yeah, and I understand you had a corporate background before working for a big conglomerate. Is that true also?
Yeah, no, 21 years of my working life have been with Shell Chemicals.
Hi Rasheed. My name is Dr. Donna Palmer. I'm an associate professor of immunology at the Royal Veterinary College, University of London.
So what we've already got here is a trio of very accomplished men, which is interesting, isn't it? Because I understand that the work of Reach Society is to provide positive role models and positive encouragement to go out there and reach society, particularly as I understand it, aimed to empower particularly young black men. Can you tell us, how did Reach Society come about? Who wants to kick us off with that?
You want to start?
Why not? Why not? Catch. Reach Society, in fact, began life as a government initiative, Labour government at the time, who had commissioned some work that was picked up by PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, who did some research into the impact and cost impact on the BAME community and therefore the
Black and minority ethnic.
Yes, black and minority ethnic community. Looking at the adverse impact at the hands of the criminal justice system, almost, I would say, as a forerunner to the Lammy Review in effect. But what it highlighted, what that report and research highlighted, was that at the current rate at that point, some 9 years ago now, but at that current rate, the cost to the British economy would run into the billions of pounds, £20 billion, by the year 2020, because of the cost in stop and search, in disproportionate sentencing, and in the ways in which members of the BAME, Black, Asian and minority ethnic community were being treated. In particular, men from that community.
Right.
And so out of that research, a number of recommendations were made, and one of them was to recruit a national network of role models, of black male role models. And so Reach identified from 300 plus applications. They recruited 20 national role models together with 20 regional role models, and myself and Donald are here as members of that cohort, the original recruits, national and regional role models.
To do that piece of work, and as I understand it, for whatever reasons, that initiative fell away, but you saw, as I understand it, the importance of that work and carrying on with
I think that's where Dwayne came in.
Absolutely, that's where I come in, because I felt offended by the fact that that national role model programme was slated to run for 3 years, but only ran for 18 months.
Right.
So I spoke to my friends and asked the question, was it doing anything of value?
Right.
Both of them answered, yes it was.
Right.
But now that that programme was being shut down, the question to us was, what are we going to do about it? We are 3 fathers, 8 children, 4 boys, 4 girls, and we have a situation which could help our young people, but it was no more.
Yeah, but I get the feeling it goes beyond that. I get the feeling from knowing Rob for some time, meeting you, that it's not just about your own children. You're passionate of reaching far beyond that. So can you tell us a little bit about what then, as you then picked up the reins, what's the vision of Reach Society as you renamed it? What's the vision and what's the work as you then saw it? Because I guess that gave you an opportunity.
Yeah, but Rasheed, I think the important thing is to separate the government programme, which ended in the spring of 2010,
Yes.
and our work, which is Reach Society, which
Yes.
started 6 months later.
Right, yes.
And our vision is to help our young people to make an emotional connection with professionals from our community.
Right.
Because by doing that, it makes it easy for them to choose pathways to success.
Right.
That's the highest goal.
Right. So tell us about that bit then. So it sounds as though you were very clear. You realised that there's this opportunity that actually, if you are able to connect with those young people and to connect them in a way whereby they can look at those opportunities in terms of themselves and society and all those possibilities for them, that would have an impact. Was that very deliberate, that you had that focus which was on that professional side? Tell us a little bit about that.
I want to add, yeah, because one of the key things, and I think it was Rob that's mentioned this, and in previous conversation, is 2 things I want to say. is what you can be is what you see,
Mhm.
and that's really important.
Mhm.
But equally more important is the narrative that is what is the black community,
Mhm.
and often the narrative is slightly different than I say the reality,
Mhm.
because if you scratch below the surface, there are some very successful people of colour. And more importantly, then when young people can see someone who looks like them, talks like them, who's running his own business,
Mm.
see someone who looks like them, talks like them, who's an engineer,
Yeah.
all of a sudden,
A
the
senior
narrative-
civil servant, somebody who
Exactly.
runs their own business, somebody who's worked for one of the world's biggest corporates.
Yeah.
Suddenly it changes that narrative. And is there something linked to that, to what you were saying, Rob, about that the starting narrative is that we hear all the time, the number of B&E people are either in the mental health system or at some point in the criminal justice system, which we know is only one element of the story. Is that something that you were very clear about wanting to address and tackle, Rob?
Without question, and just picking up on what Donald has said, proximity principle is a real thing.
Yeah.
The idea and notion that we are defined by others, we are fed information often by a misguided or indeed a ill-intended media that tells us we are less than, is something that impacts on us just as human beings, let alone layering on the whole issue of ethnicity and indeed race. What we saw, indeed what Dwayne had originally as a vision and what appealed to Donald and I in our private conversations at first, was this idea that through bringing professionals, black professionals, through affinity role modelling, to be with members of the community to show what's possible and to show what we're all capable of, that we can actually build the amity in our community, build that, grow it, despite some of the turbulence that is faced elsewhere.
Right, let me pick up on that interesting word, that proximity is what I'm hearing from there. If there's that opportunity for whoever I am, I'm a young man, I'm a young black person, and I'm at that stage where I'm trying to find myself in the world, I have aspirations, hopes and dreams or whatever, this thing that I'm getting, that if there's enough closeness, or I'm seeing people or being able to engage with or talk to or be inspired by, hear content by, then that can have an impact. So I want then to find out, tell me a little bit about the work. What is it, the work that you actually do, and tell us a little bit about that.
That's one for me to kick off on, and
Yes.
coming on the back.
And I'm now drawn to all these things. It's great to hear from the
Reach Society has been going for 7 years now.
Yes.
And in that 7 years, we've impacted more than 10,000 young people. How do we do that? Our key annual event is our careers conference. And in that careers conference, we showcase more than 6 professionals, all of them male, from our community. In addition to that, we have what we describe as the Perfect 10 workshop, where we theme 10 key things that we believe all young people need to know now so they can make good decisions. We can't leave that information sharing to schools, or in many cases to parents who won't necessarily have the facts. And the third thing,
or the time, or the inclination, or the ability, or whatever's going on.
All of the
perhaps.
above. But the third thing we also showcase are employers, large and small, so young people have that close contact with them as well, so they can ask those questions about, what do I need to have if I want to do this? When can I apply to you for something else, whether it's apprenticeship or graduate application or whatever? And what we're finding is that many of those young people are booking opportunities directly from those events.
In its simplest term, Rasheed, what Dwayne is describing is what runs through the heart of our work, which is about building connections. What we say from the outset is that it is about bringing preparation together with opportunity. A number of employers that I deal with, and I deal with as a civil servant, I celebrate 34 years as a civil servant next month. I like Donald and Dwayne. I'm a father of 2. I have a daughter and a son, both of whom have one already through uni, the next making their way through uni. And so I understand some of the tests that our younger people face. But very often I hear from employers to say that our community, that's the black community, are hard to reach, or we don't know where the talent is, or we can't find the talent. Well, you see, we go back to proximity again. not just simply as a black man, as black men, but our proximity talent. We live, sleep, drink, know where that talent is. In many ways, it's a very straightforward task, sometimes not simple, but straightforward to bring those two parties together. And the synergy then just works for itself.
Wow, that's very powerful. So it sounds like something in that room,
We
yes.
should say a little bit more about the talent.
Yeah.
And I really want Donald to say something about, you know, the networking program.
Yes, yeah, tell us
So
about
I want to
that.
tell you about that, but I want to comment about the synergy, because the added value of the careers conference is there's two things, because often the employers who recognise outward facing, we might not be attracting people of colour. So, and what you now see in many organisations, they have a BME or BAM network. And so what happens is that those employers will generally bring someone of colour in their organisations. But equally, what is also been critical over the last few years about our careers conference is almost one of celebratory, because people are coming in and all of a sudden they're seeing a completely different narrative of their representatives.
A different complexion.
Exactly.
Right.
But
Right.
I will also say, what other key thing is that the professionals themselves are actually interacting with each
There's
other.
so many things here I want to
So
pick up on.
there's so many things going on.
Tell us a little bit about the networking. And before we close, I want to talk a little bit about that, but I also want to talk about your own, not so much your experience, but what has been your own magic. What was it that you found in yourself? Because I guess there's a number of things here, isn't it? There's the young people and helping them see a whole new narrative, and then there's the bring the employers there. So there's all sorts of spin-offs that might happen. But I'm also interested in what is it that in the individual has made, despite whatever setbacks or background, I don't know that much about your individual background, what was that magic spark in your own lives? But let's quickly pick up on the networking bit, and I want to come back to that point now.
So I want to come to the networking bit, because that's really been a really blossoming fruit, because what's happened is that the professional men in particular, there may only be one or two in their organisation, depending on where they are. But what happens with the careers conference, and now we fuel this with our monthly networking conversation, it's almost come like a fellowship.
So there's a monthly networking event, which anybody from that can attend.
Reach Society conversations.
Right.
Yes. And what's happened in these conversations is really about identifying people who can actually contribute. These are people that have got really important skill sets. We're talking of people that may be in various industries who can actually bring knowledge about our community.
Right.
And that's actually has enhanced everyone's thinking.
Right, I'm mindful about time, so just in the next 2 or 3 minutes, just before we close, I want to pick up, it's fascinating, I'm very keen for people to go along to the website, and some which we'll touch on at the moment. I want to ask 2 questions actually. The first thing, tell us what would success look like? What's your aspirations, what's your hope now? You've already talked about the number of people that you've reached through Reach Society.
For me, success has always looked like this. We have a population of 3 million folks in the black community, and I include dual heritage people in that count.
Yes.
We would like to be in the position to know that every young person in the UK black community knows the name Reach Society, because in doing that they'll know there's a beacon with professional folks that they can find out about and connect with, either through our website, reachsociety.com, or by coming along to any of the many events that we roll out.
And they can find all those details on the website. Tell me then, just before we close, there's so many questions I want to ask, but first of all, what's the one thing, how did you find, you're only going to have 30 seconds to answer this question, so I don't know how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
How did you find yourself in your own magic? Because you're all accomplished people. And it's interesting, isn't it? It happens differently. But how did you find yourself, your own path and your own magic? You've only got 30 seconds.
Yeah, a little bit from each of us.
Yes,
Rob,
please, Rob.
I can't begin to answer that question without referring to my faith in a living God.
Yes.
And so it would be wrong of me not to do so.
Yes,
You give me 30 seconds, I say to you that it's about my faith in a living God.
Yes.
Without God I'm nothing, and yet through Christ all things are possible. And so the first thought on my mind when I wake up is how God will enable me to offer my best. And my very last thought before my eyes close and I rest for the night is to say, thank you, Lord, for another day. I pray I meet.
And was that always the case when you were young, or was it something?
It was
else?
always,
Yeah.
it was instilled in me from a very early age,
Yes.
and you know, there's a context to this and a backdrop to this about the black church and where a number of us come from.
Yes.
I'm not really going down that road at this point. You've asked me a personal question, and I'm giving you my honest answer.
Yes.
I mean, absolutely beyond that, and in the physical, there are role models of my own that I look to. People that throughout the years and ages have actually inspired me
And
to
were some
offer my
of them,
best.
aside from that some of them are people you met, and some of those are extraordinary black role models from throughout history. It's a combination of both. In
An
your case.
absolute combination of both. Both those as posters on my wall,
Yeah.
and then getting to know them in a deeper way through
Yes.
reading and
Yes.
research,
Yeah.
but also those in the physical
Yes.
that I can meet for a cup of coffee or tea.
I'm mindful about the time running, so it's going to be
Mine is very simple.
Yes.
My parents, for me, were my first two role models. My father, a policeman, highly ambitious. My mother, a businesswoman, highly ambitious. The only reason in 1960 our family came here is to access the education for myself and my siblings that they could not afford to pay for had we stayed in Jamaica.
Yes.
That drive has been
Wonderful.
there all
We're
my
literally
life.
about to run out, so you've got 30 seconds. 'Cause we've run out of time.
Basically, I've got a combination of Rob and Dwayne.
Well-
But it is family, my parents, coming from humble beginnings.
Yes.
And the fact that I was the first one to go to uni. But it's equally individuals that have inspired me to actually try and do the best that I can be.
Well, wonderful. And
And
you've
there's more in
inspired
this
us.
book.
It's wonderful. Thank you very much.
The story so
I
far.
want to
Yeah.
thank you all for your time. And you said reachsociety.com.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Rasheed.
All the best.
Thank
Keep
you.
smiling.
Great.
We will.